Okay, well, let's talk about him. So, this man is of German descent. And you say, well, okay, what difference does that make? Well, maybe none. But let's just talk a little bit about it. So here's his ancestry. It says, according to this biographer, the family descended from an itinerant lawyer, Hans Drumpf. Okay? So his real name is not T-Rex. It's actually D-Rex. Okay? So that's something else to keep in mind. That's not his real name. It's Drumpf, who settled in Karlstadt, a village in the Palatinate, Germany, in 1608, and whose descendants changed their name from Drumpf to T-Rex. During the 30 Years... Whoops. Sorry. I was trying to make that bigger for you. During the 30 Years' War, the last name of T-Rex is on record in Karlstadt since the 18th century. Okay. So, says including... There's been several variations, including drum, trom. Okay. And so you get the idea there. So that's kind of intriguing. Okay. Well, why might that be significant? Well, in Germany, they had a concept back during, I mean, it's been in the works for a while, since the early 1900s, but it came to popularity, and you could argue it's still being done. It's still being done. You know, the whole thing that happened in the second WAR never really stopped, okay? It comes in different colors and flavors, right? And it comes with different names, but it never really changes, okay? So the goal that the man with the funny mustache has, and he too had people behind him that were supporting him from here and from other places. People like the ancestor of the president. It starts with a B, but it's like a shrub. Okay, you know what name I'm talking about. It's like a shrub, but starts with a B. Can you guess what it is? So anyway, but one of his answers just supported the man with the funny mustache, and it's been a plan for a while. So the guy with the funny mustache, was not acting on his own, just like they're not acting on their own today. There's always people behind the curtains, so to speak. But their goal for a long time has been create the Ubermensch, which is like a Superman. Okay, and there's argument that Superman, the hero that we know from the comics, actually was based on this concept. And so that was what they were trying to do, okay? Create the Ubermensch. And so you even see when you look up Ubermensch. Now, what is Ubermensch? It says the ideal superior man of the future who could rise above conventional Christian morality. What? Okay, so this is a very anti-Christian notion, guys. This is the idea of becoming super on your own strength, not by power of God, not by God's blessing, but the idea that you could rise above Christian morality, which there is no above Christian morality. If you actually are a true Christian living out real Christian morality, there's nothing higher than God. There's nothing higher than Christ. But that's their idea. That's still their idea. You know, the whole thing, that, you know, I just went over this in the last video with the AI. It's the same thing they're doing with the AI, guys. They're just moving to new technology. It's the same thing they've been trying to do over and over. It's what Satan's been trying to do from the very beginning. He's trying to steal. He's trying to steal from God and create his own race of beings. He's trying to take the best of what we have and make it his own, right? And so that's what this concept is. And so the idea that they think they can rise above conventional Christian morality, see, this is by Nietzsche. Nietzsche was the one who said God is dead, right? And then God famously, after Nietzsche died, said Nietzsche is dead. You know, that he famously had that quote, right? So this is an anti-Christian notion. This is an atheist notion. The idea, not necessarily atheists, the people that are really up there because they know God's real, but they're against God. It's anti-God, right? That they're going to make their own super race to fight against God, which is what they're still doing today. They're just doing it under a different way. So the Ubermensch, okay, so this is what was popular during the second WAR by the people over there in German of the Knee, okay? And ironically, interestingly, the term Mensch is actually a popular Jewish term. and Yiddish term, which means a person of integrity and honor. So an Ubermensch is like a super Mensch. So kind of intriguing that there's a Jewish connection in the word as well. Now, with Chucky, there were many articles that said he is a royal Mensch. Like right after his coronation, they're saying he's a true Mensch. He's a royal Mensch. Well, royal Mensch is almost kind of like Ubermensch if you think about it. You know, Ubermensch or royal Mensch. You know, it's kind of like you're a heightened Mensch. You're above. You're a Mensch to the next level, right? And this is what they said about the Chuckster. They also said here, before he was crowned, they called him a Mensch for all seasons. And I talk about this in some of those videos I showed you. A long friend of the Jews, a Mensch for all seasons. So that he's a champion of Jewish culture. So this guy has a lot going for him too in terms of the Jewish-Israel connection. And so could these two be working together somehow? Could there be some Ubermenschness going on here? Now, this is the bumper sticker that they had for Mr. T-Rex when he was in office that the loonies put out there. They said we had a Mensch, now we have a Meshuggah, and Meshuggah is like a fool. So, and they were talking about Mr. O. Mr. O is their Mensch, and this current guy is the Meshuggah. So interestingly, even though the leaders are obviously supportive of him because he's actually doing things for Israel, they're kind of against him. Like the general population of JEWSs are not really supportive of him. Not in the way that they are of Chucky. So could they be working both sides of the fence so that they get everybody on board? You know, could be something along those lines. But you could also argue that maybe Mr. T-Rex is really trying to help the JEWSs, and that the other people who claim they are really aren't, and that they're working against them. So there's different ways you could look at it. Now, during the second WAR, this is the kind of race of Ubermensch they were trying to create. Okay, this was the name of the Ubermensch race, and they were using a process, this process, in order to make these Ubermensch people, these superhuman people, the perfect race. That's what they were trying to do, and those people in particular would be a master race. And that's what they're still trying to do today. Like I said, they just have new technology. You know, we're much more advanced than the 1940s. And so there's and 30s and 40s. So there's new technology. And so that is what they're still trying to do. They're trying to create the master race. All the people who are in charge are trying to create the master race and get rid of all of us peons, peasants, whatever, useless eaters, and create this master race. And so what it meant was encouraging people of quote unquote pure blood. Now, what they considered to be pure blood were those with blonde hair and blue eyes. That's intriguing. Sounds familiar. Blonde hair and blue eyes. Are we talking about anybody like that right now? Blonde hair and blue eyes. Okay, let me go back down here. Gotta be careful here. Okay, must be careful. So they would encourage them to have more kids, and they had these set up these places called lay to the bins to the born, where they would have women and men that were just devoted to this purpose to create this master of the races. Okay, so and they were specifically people who had these qualities. It says it again down here. It says they would actually go out and kidnap children who had blonde hair and blue eyes. Whoops. Sorry. Got a new thing. It's not working well. Okay. So they would actually go out and kidnap kids who specifically had blonde hair and blue eyes. And they would take them to these facilities and they would force them to procreate, I guess, and raise them and then force them to procreate so they could create this superhuman race. Of course, now again they're doing it by other means, but here, let me just show you this again. It says this new imagined biological category was of tall, says in quotes, a tall, light-complexioned, blonde, blue-eyed race. Huh. Tall, light-complexioned, blonde, blue-eyed race. Interesting. Sounds a lot like this guy. Tall, blonde, blue-eyed race. Almost looks like he would be part of, maybe the ones that they abducted or something. Interesting. Blonde hair, blue-eyed, tall. Is there some sort of Ubermensch connection? Maybe someone who could lead the military in some way. Oh, yeah, here he is, right dead center there, in case you didn't catch that was him. Right there in the middle, and he's leading a whole brigade. Interesting. Wonder if there's any connection. Tall, fair-skinned, pale-skinned, blonde, blue-eyed. So, Ubermensch, perhaps? Ubermensch? I forgot to Ubermention that. So something to consider there. So let's take a look at this card. And again, it's still going to tie back to the crown that he received. Because notice he doesn't wear a crown in this picture yet. Doesn't have the crown on yet. But he's got the little orb, and he's got the scepter. They just happen to be in the opposite hand than you normally would see them in. Something else I want you to notice is that this card is tilted, and it's rubbing against the Tower card, right? The World card, and the Magician card. You see that? You see how the corners touch it? And what I've heard is that when the card touches like that, it means there's a connection. There's a connection between them. So it's not just his card that he's on, which says Judgment, by the way, but it's also the Tower, the World, and the Magician. Okay, so let's break this down a little bit more, shall we? Okay, well, interestingly, there's a term in the world of cards, and it's called the TRUMP card. Interesting play on words there, isn't it? Now, that particular type of card in a card game is the one that kind of rules them all. It does in a card game. It kind of is. It's the card that that wins. It's the winning card. It's the card that winning. It's the card that isn't that kind of takes out any other play. You pull that card out and it kind of stops the game, and can kind of outrank every other card in the deck. It's the card that wins a hand, as it says right here, right? And it can also be used metaphorically to describe some secret advantage that you have. That's kind of intriguing as well. So is this a card that they plan on playing? Is this a card they are playing? Kind of intriguing when you think about that. So, okay. So that's kind of an interesting play on words and an interesting possibility. Are they playing their hand? Is that what's going on here? They're playing their other cards first. They've got the chess match going on, as we talked about when we looked at IP to the G. They actually have a chessboard there with C7 and taking out the Q and bringing in the KING. So you've got the chess going on, but you also have a card game going on. It's kind of like they're literally playing with cards and chess pieces. And of course, we know when he ran or was in the House of White, his mate had the name PENC, so you put it together, it sounded like trumpets. So it's a very interesting connections here. Okay, and then of course this man came out with an actual documentary with that name related to him. Okay, so is that what they're doing? Are they going to play this card? Are they playing their hand? So when we look at this card that he's on what they're calling the Judgment card, right? Let me just back up to that a second. Okay, you see that there? But what's intriguing about this is not typically how the Judgment card looks. Again, I'm not into tarot cards. I just studied this for this video, but it's kind of a combo card between Judgment and, as we see, the Emperor card are combined in this card. So, so let's take a look at this. So, where am I here? So this Judgment card, is very curious and will probably be very inspiring to many of you as you take a look at it. I'm not inspiring you to do tarot cards, but what do you see there? A bunch of naked people. No. What you see is people coming up out of their graves. Oh, that's exciting. Resurrection. Okay, we see resurrection. And we see someone with a trumpet in their hand. Would you say that's the last trumpet, perhaps? Or the last T-R-U-M-P? And notice it has blonde hair. Just kind of throw that in there while we're at it. But interesting. So that's the judgment card. It's actually a resurrection card, which is what we're all waiting for, right? Resurrection Day and Redemption Day, Redemption of our Bodies Day. That's what we're looking forward to. So that's the actual judgment card in a normal deck of tarot cards. Again, these cards we're looking at on that cover of that magazine were all made specifically to communicate a message. But all of these cards also, I must mention, are considered TRUMP cards. These are each one of these cards on here. And when it says Planet TRUMP, each of these cards is one of those cards in the regular hand, in the regular tarot deck. Each of these cards has that power to TRUMP all the other cards. So that's something to point out as well. So, okay, interesting. So keep that in mind. Now, Carla pointed this out to me as well, that the term TRUMP in the KJV is only used twice, and both of them are specifically related to resurrection and rapture. There are other times that trumpet is used throughout the New Testament, as we'll see here, but it's the full word, trumpet. Okay, trumpet. See there? Matthew and 1 Corinthians and Revelation, so forth. But TRUMP is only used twice in the whole New Testament of the KJV, and they're both in relation to harpazo and rapture and judgment, the time of judgment. Because really, yes, there will be a judgment day after the 1,000 years, but really the judgment is being made at that time. You know, when people are being taken away, some are being chosen and some are not. So there is a judgment being made at that point. An assessment, if you will. So that's interesting. And they specifically use that term TRUMP. So he's on the judgment card. He is TRUMP. He is the last TRUMP. And is it referring, as we noted, the 483 days, is it referring to his last term? Something to consider there. Is that what we're talking about, the last TRUMP? Is it referring to that? So that's something to consider also. Okay. So here in Daniel 7, it says, when I was thinking about the horns, there before me was another horn, a little one, which came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were uprooted before it. This horn had eyes like the eyes of a human being, and a mouth that spoke boastfully. Well, he certainly fulfills that, doesn't he? I don't think we've seen a more boastful person in office of late that comes to mind. I don't think anybody compares in terms of their boastfulness. Well, he certainly fulfills that. What's interesting is a little horn. Well, another name for a horn is a trumpet. So could it be a little TRUMP that we're talking about there? Is that another play on words? Now, his card that he's on also combines the Emperor card. So you've got 2 cards in play. You've got the Emperor card and you've got the Judgment card. So his card is literally called Judgment, but he's sitting there with a scepter in his hand and the ball, the orb, in his other hand. Now this guy on this card actually has them in the proper hand that a normal king would have them. But once again, going back to T-Rex here, he has them in the opposite hand. Now, notice as well, he's sitting on the American flag, what looks like the American flag. Pretty clear it is because you can see the star down there and so forth. And it seems like it's coiled up like a serpent. Is it like a serpent about to leap? You could also compare it to a commode. Is he sitting on a toilet here? Some people mentioned the POOP emoji perhaps, is a reference there of like what has happened to America. But is that his springboard from which he's going to leap, or is there a coiled serpent beneath it all? So that's kind of interesting. And then the ball he's sitting on is kind of odd as well. It's got all these lines on it. I don't know if there's any significance there other than just shadowing, but that's kind of intriguing as well. All right, let's keep going here. So the emperor. Okay, great. So let's talk a little bit about these things that are in his hands. So he has specifically in his hands a scepter that has an eagle on the top of it. Okay, so you see here. Let's go back over here. See how it's got the eagle on the top? Okay, so that's not just any old scepter. It's specifically the eagle scepter, or what looks like an eagle. Now, if we look at the actual, going over here to this mace, there is a mace of the United States House of Representatives, also called the Mace of the Republic. So like of all the Republic. It's a ceremonial mace and one of the oldest symbols of the United States government. Show you that up close there. See that there? Looks pretty similar, doesn't it? It's got the eagle on top and the scepter on the bottom. Now there is an orb underneath, but since he has the orb in the other hand, perhaps that's why they don't picture it there. It symbolizes the governmental authority of the United States, and more specifically the legislative authority of the House of Representatives. So does this represent him having some legislative authority, or is it the idea of just the United States ruling over all, or him having rulership over the United States? I mean, remember, they're going to divide everything into 10 republics. Is he one of the 10 kings, and he's going to have rulership of that particular kingdom? That's something to consider also. So it's the proper symbol of office shall be provided sergeant at arms, such form. So kind of, it's pretty big. Look at that guy holding it there. Wow. So, okay. It's also an ancient battle weapon and derived from a Roman fasces. Not sure what that is. Like a battle axe. So again, it goes back to the Roman times again. And there's the eagle up close there sitting above the ebony rods. So kind of intriguing. Is that what this eagle is pointing to? Just kind of scrolling down a little bit more here. And there's some more pictures of it. There's from the back. Okay. So, okay. Interesting. Then we also have the two scepters of the royal throne. Now, one of them has like a ruby on the top or a diamond, and the other one has not an eagle, but supposedly a dove. Now, that is what the Chuckster had in his hands. Go over there for a second. Now, it makes you think of the different animals that are mentioned in Scripture about the beast, and one of them looks like an eagle. Perhaps there's a connection to that as well. Maybe just talking about different animals that are sort of under the Chuckster that are going to be in play here, or working with the Chuckster. Maybe not underneath, but hey, Vicky, thanks so much for becoming a member. Praise the Lord. Thanks for joining us. It's good to have you in the mix. And so he's got these two scepters, right? Two scepters, and they both represent something slightly different. Let's take a look at what they represent here. So the two sovereign scepters will be used at coronation. The sovereign scepters with cross represents the sovereign's temporal power. Sorry, I'm trying to make that a little bigger for you. His temporal power and is associated with good governance. Okay, so the one with the cross means, hey, you're temporary, bro. Don't get carried away. Don't get cocky, kid. You're only in office for a short amount of time, and that you need to use it for good governance. It comprises a gold rod surmounted by an enameled heart-shaped structure which holds the Cullinan diamond. The scepter was created for King Chuckster II and was added in 1901. Okay, the sovereign scepter with the dove is traditionally known as the rod of equity and mercy. It represents the sovereign's spiritual role, with the enameled dove with outspread wings representing the Holy Ghost. It was created by the crown jeweler Robert Viner in 1661. So that's kind of interesting. Does this bird, because we don't really know what kind of bird. I mean, It looks like an eagle. You think it's an eagle. That makes sense because that's the bird of the United States. It could be but it's a bird of prey. Versus the dove is a bird of peace. Because there's some sort of religious connection here. Is he the one who's going to help lead the wayward Christians over to the mark, over to the beast kingdom? So it kind of makes you wonder what role he has to play. Now, it's not in his right hand, though. It's in the left, and the orb is the one in the right hand, which we're going to get to in just a second. Okay. So the other connection with the eagle is the Reichsadler, and that's the Imperial Eagle, and that goes back to the Holy Roman Empire. Okay. Now, this eagle could be single or double-headed. Now, as we see this guy here, now he's got the fleur de lis, which is interesting. That's above the chuckster's crown, as we saw with the mark there. But he's got that eagle going there. Could also be a double-headed one. So it's related to the Holy Roman Empire. So could there be a Holy Roman Empire connection that they're pointing to here with the eagle, the Imperial Eagle? And here's another example of that. As we saw during the second WAR, they use the eagle a lot. I'm not going to show you all their symbolism, but feel free to check it out. What they used in German of the Knee back in the second WAR, they used a lot of eagles connected with their wicked symbolism, I'll just say at this point. And you can go check that out for yourself. Now, there's also the dove or eagle, shaped like an eagle. This isn't a dove, this is actually an eagle, that they use during Chucky's ceremony, where they poured out the holy oil from Israel to anoint him the king of Israel. And here's an example of it. As you can see, it has the scepter in the right hand, the orb in the left hand, and then it has another eagle on top of that scepter, just like we see Mr. T-Rex has. And in the hand of that eagle, you have another scepter, another orb, and probably in the hand of, there's like a little tiny eagle on there that also has, just keeps going. It's like a mirror, just keeps going deeper and deeper, the many layers. So when Chucky was coronated, he held the orb in his right hand, okay, during the investiture phase of the coronation ceremony. What is investiture phase? Well, let's take a look. So here he's holding it in his right hand, and this is when he's being invested with the powers. He's being given the powers. Now, again, going back to Mr. T-Rex, he's got it in his right hand. So does this mean he's being given the powers, but is not yet in that power role yet? Kind of similar to the Chucky being given that power. It says here, investiture means the action of formally investing a person with honors or rank. So is it that he's in the process of being invested with it, but he has not yet achieved that role? Because then when you achieve the role, you switch hands. As you see here, now he has it in the left hand, and the scepter is in the right hand once he's actually crowned, King. Now, I thought this was interesting because when we look at the orb that Mr. T-Rex has in his hand, here we kind of see the wings and what looks sort of like a crown on the orb combined. When I looked at this, I'm like, well, it looks almost like a crown on the orb. So does that, the whole idea of this orb, was originally created with the three sections because there were originally only three parts to the world until the fourth part of the world was discovered. And go check out the video I did on the fourth part of the world, i.e. America, the New World, and tell you more about that. But when you look at it, it's got these three prongs, right? Like, what is that? What's on this? What's on this little? I don't know you guys, how well you can see that, but you see those little prongs down there. It's not a cross like normally is on the orb, like a Christian cross. So does it mean that instead of Christ ruling, that he will rule the world, or that the crown will rule the world? Maybe of the chuckster. I also, when I looked at it, I'm like, boy, it looks kind of like, as I looked a little bit deeper at it, said, kind of reminds me of this. Let's see if I can get over to it. Kind of reminded me of the Sputnik. You guys remember Sputnik? Sputnik was supposedly the first satellite to ever go through our skies. And it's like a little silver ball with like 4 antennae sticking out of it. And if you believe that, I guess I'm landing. In China of the Nay. I want to sell you. But anyway, wow, how interesting. Like, what is? We're supposed to believe this little ball, just kind of on its own volition, was gallivanting around the stars. Of course, they never show it to you on the screen, you know, like on the TV. They say, right now, it's like Santa Claus is going over the North Pole. You know, it's that kind of thing. Like, oh, right now, it's over you. Can you see it? And, you know, they could have sent anything up to say, see, there it is. So it is, you know, very sus, obviously, that this little ball with 4 antennae were just kind of floating around. You know, it made me think of when I went once to see the landing on Mars, right? They were having a public viewing. And I was so excited. I'm like, seriously? We're actually going to see something land on Mars? Wow. And this is back in my more gullible days, I guess. But I was like, wow, that's awesome. So, you know, we went there. It was like a late night showing. It was on OmniMax kind of thing. And it was at a museum. So I'm like, oh, this sounds great. And so we're like watching this whole thing. And then when it finally got time to show the rover supposedly landing on Mars, they showed a cartoon. They showed CGI. And I'm like, what? What? Are you serious? You're just going to show me CGI? I mean, you got to be kidding, right? You're going to show me the actual landing, right? Aren't you? Isn't that what I came here for? And they never did. They never showed the actual landing because there was no actual landing. It was done in Arizona somewhere or something. But the bottom line is, you know, it was all farce. It was like, what was I here for? To watch some cartoon explanation of how supposedly it landed? GMAB. So anyway, so here's yet another one, a ball of tinfoil and some sticks on it, that supposedly were the first satellite to go around. So I thought, could this be pointing to space, quote unquote, in some way? You know, because it looks, you know, going back over here, it looks kind of like a little Sputnik or something with a little antenna sticking, a little ball with antenna sticking out of it. So I thought, does this have something to do with a digital age, so to speak? And then I thought about the fact that while he was in office, he also initiated this effort of the Space to the Force and a new branch of the armed forces. So that is very... Notice they used to call it armed services. Now they call it armed forces because they're going to start forcing you to do a lot. So they want that to be in the name. That's intriguing. But anyway, so it looks like, isn't this out of the first Star Trek? You remember the first Star Trek? Didn't it have a chevron like this? But anyway, so that's what they've initiated under his jurisdiction. So is that what that is pointing to? Sort of the space connection, perhaps, or is it related to? Oh, and here's some more on the Space to the Force. It says Mr. T-Rex created the Space to the Force, and here's what it will actually do. Right, so he was given credit for that. Or is it related to our brains? The infamous brain to the chip that's supposed to be going in to everyone's heads, that they say everyone will have one, and they'll be using it for all kinds of crazy things. This guy uses it supposedly so that he can hear what colors he's looking at because he's colorblind. I think there'd be a better way to do it than that. Maybe some contact lenses that could talk to you or something. I don't know. But anyway, here's another person. So is this related to the antennas that are going to be connected to our craniums? Is that what's going on here? You know, when you look at that, it kind of looks like antennas. And it makes me wonder about Mr. MUSK, right? Now, I guess they've had a history, him and Mr. T-Rex, Mr. M-U-S-K, and Mr. T-Rex have not seen eye to eye. But recently, Mr. M-U-S-K has had warm words for Mr. T-Rex. So is this all been a plot to get us to think, oh, they're finally going to work together? And could there be a connection with him and the infamous brain to the chip that is going to be implanted? Then I also thought about this when the Chuckster became Prince Chuckster. They put this crown on him, and it looks like something out of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood or something from one of the puppets. I mean, it's like so tackily done. It's like, I can't believe it looks like it's made out of aluminum foil. But anyway, this is what they put on his head, and it looks something like a satellite or antennas sticking out of the cranium. And here he is, it's being put on top of his head there. And they made this especially for him. Now that ball that's on the top is literally a ping pong ball with gold plating on it. So, but they made this especially for him, and so made by some modern artist or what have you. But very intriguing. It has all those little spikes sticking out, very similar to what T-Rex has on his little ball. Does that mean that it's Charles in charge? Is it Chucky who's actually calling the shots? And it looks like the Daily Planet or something, you know, with all these little satellites around it or something. I mean, what is this supposed to represent? Supposedly, what I read here is that it represents the sign that he's from Scorpio and the constellation of Scorpio or something along those lines. Here's a close-up of it. Let's take a look at this for a second. So, there we go. So yeah, kind of strange, you know, like what is this all about? And suppose it has like 13 constellations, and you know, has some connection to Scorpio. Oh yeah, right here it says Platinum arranged as the constellation of Scorpio, Chucky's star sign. That's his star sign. He's a Scorpion. Well, that kind of makes sense. Within the 24 karat gold base, no cap. No offense to Scorpios out there, but sometimes the shoe fits. The fleur-de-lis, he has the fleur-de-lis all around it too, which is the Black Prince and a bunch of crosses all around it, because it's the false Messiah, so that would also make sense. And then they say the diamonds represent the 7 deadly sins and 7 gifts of the Spirit, which, by the way, the 7 deadly sins are not the actual sins listed in the Bible. Some may overlap, but that's a little bit different. But anyway, and then the gifts of the Holy Spirit. So, okay. So is that what's on this little ball? Is this a reference back to Chucky's spiked crown or something of that nature? Okay. Now, all of this is just kind of fun to consider. We don't really know, you know, but we're just sort of speculating. It gets us thinking. When you start thinking, it opens the mind, and you may discover new things. Okay. So let's look at these cards a little bit. These TRUMP cards. And we're still going to talk a little bit about the crown that he notably doesn't have yet in that card, and he just received. Okay, so here's the first card in the list, and he is touching, you can see the corner a little bit there, is touching this card. Now, this card is kind of interesting. It has a tower. Of course, it harkens back to 9 of the 1 of the 1 back in September of 01. But is a tower being struck by lightning, okay? And we know, as Jesus says, that Satan will fall like lightning from heaven, right? We know. And we know when we translate that, we get bar to the ak to the o to the bomb to the So that's interesting. Okay, so we got this Satan falling like lightning from heaven, okay? So also, it's splitting the tower in half, but you also have a piece of the tower. It's almost like a new tower is coming behind. It could be seen as a piece of it, or it could be look like a new tower is going to be formed out of it. Now, on both sides, you have the Christians with the cross, and then you have the atheists or communists on the other side. So what's intriguing about this is the fulfillment of what they've been plotting for a long time. And, you know, I did a couple of videos that you should check out if you haven't already. One of them is this one, which is all 3 of the WARs was planned back in 1871. And I have sort of a short version of that, which is this one, planned in 1871. So I encourage you to watch those two videos because it relates to what I'm sharing right now. Let me go back over here to where I was sharing that. Okay. So when we look at this, you see the division between the Christians and the atheists, right? And that is, let me see, is this, wait, no, not that one yet. Actually, where is that? Hold on one second. I think I moved something over here. Where'd you go? Oh, here it is. Okay. So in this letter, I'll go over in that video more detail, but Mr. P.I. to the K.E. famously wrote this letter to Giuseppe. And in that letter, this is back in 1871, he gives the plan for all three WARs. And the third WAR is specifically designed to, and I'll read you the quote here, if I can get down to it. It says, this manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. Okay, so that's their plan. They want to get rid of Christianity and they want to get rid of atheism. Get rid of atheism? Yeah, because they're not atheists. They're Satanists. They believe in Satan. They believe in Lucifer. They worship Lucifer. So they want to get everybody worshiping Lucifer. And you're ultimately, to get, when those who give into the mark are going to be forced to worship Lucifer. And so they want to destroy Christianity and atheism. So that's what we see in this first card here, is that Christianity and atheism are being divided. And we also count the 10, there's 10 flames at the top. There's going to be 10 kings that are under this one lightning bolt, Satan, that are going to be serving as well. And you'll just see kind of a lightning bolt going up to the door. And you see kind of the reference to the 95 Theses of Martin Luther, kind of breaking things up there. So that's kind of intriguing. Okay. Also in this, we see the associates of lightning bolt is kind of reminiscent of Shazam. It's been pushed popularly in movies lately. And his nemesis is called Black Adam. Now that's not Atom, that's Adam, just like Adam from the Garden of Eden. Only he's the Black Adam, or the Teth Adam. So he's like the Satan falling from heaven. And we just see kind of a representation of that. And this term Teth is interesting because it's both Hebrew, Aramaic, and Arabic. Kind of looks like a little bit like a crown. Like if you were to put two of these together, you almost get a crown out of it. But it also relates to it in the Hebrew Tet. It actually is a serpent or a snake. So is it a reference to, when they're talking about it in this context, the Tet Adam is the satanic Adam. And we see that here. Let me go back over here for a second. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and is it the angel masquerading as the angel of light? So he pretends to be the hero, but he's actually, just like the Antichrist is going to do, he's going to pretend to be the hero, but he's actually the enemy. And here we see that this is the letter Tet, and we see the head and the tail. I think there's a better picture of it down here. So you see the evil versus the good, and it has a crown on it. And the crown is very similar to what is on the orb. Do you see those three little prongs there? With, let's see if I can get a little closer to that. So it's 3 prongs with the little knobs at the end of it. Isn't that interesting? Those 3 antennas. So it's the serpent. See the head, the tail, the tet Adam, and it's got those three lines on there. So if we go back over there just to show you that real quick, you see that it's got the 3 with the little dots on it. So I thought that was interesting, representing the serpent or the devil, the devil's head. Okay, and let's keep going. So that's that card. Now, as far as the fact that he doesn't have a crown on his head yet, I think that's what I'm going to share with you now. Okay, so this crown that he was given, this Torah crown, is called the Jerusalem crown or the Torah crown. Another name for it is Keter, Keter. Okay, now let me go back to that article because they actually say that in the article. I just want to show that to you here. Like I say, guys, you know, I don't phone it in. I dig deep, and I hope you appreciate it. So this is why it takes me days, you know, researching this stuff, because there's always just more to it. It's just so interesting. One thing leads to another. So, you know, fluffy videos don't do it for me. I have to get something out. I have to be like, man, I have to get all my questions answered. And every time I ask a question, I get 10 more questions. So, okay. He's the former president of Keter Jerusalem, the crown of Jerusalem. So Keter means crown. Okay, I just want to show you that. So they actually call this Torah crown the Keter, and I think they refer to it down here in the picture as well. I'll get down there. So I just want to show you that. Yeah, see, here it is. The Keter Yerushalayim. That's what they call this crown, or the crown of Jerusalem. Okay, see that there? So it's kind of small print, but hopefully you can see it. Okay, so going back over here to Keter now. So that's what this crown is, okay? Okay, well, this crown is connected to Kabbalism, the Kabbalah, which is like Jewish mysticism. And it's connected to what is known as the tree of life, okay? The tree of life, which is something that's used in Kabbalah. Here is an example of this tree of life. Now, as you can see here, whoops, didn't show it to me. What happened? Usually I click on the image and it opens it up, but it didn't open it up that time. That's okay. I'm going to show it to you in another spot. But, yeah, because I don't think you can see it too well there. But anyway, so this is the Keter. This is the crown. So it's actually connected to Kabbalism. Oh, and here's, let's see if it opens this picture. So here you can see the crown above there with the spikes. And there, if you look at those spikes on the top, it looks a lot like the Abraham of the Accords A's, the way those A's were. And, of course, there's a crown there, and then you've got the menorah underneath, very similar to what we saw in that backdrop, what's the name of it? Pecoret, or what's it called again? What's it called? Here it is. No, not that one. You know what I'm talking about. The parakeet, sorry. The parakeet. So, not parakeet, parakeet. So, okay, so the Keter is the crown, but it crowns the tree of life in Kabbalism. And let me just go over there. And I'll be able to show it to you from there. Okay, so here's the picture of the tree of life. And you see at the top, you see the Keter. That's where the crown goes, okay? And then the tree of life goes from there. Well, this is all part of their mysticism, and really it's another form of Satanism, really, because this is not what God wants us to be doing. You know, it's mystical magic, ceremonial magic and stuff. So it's just another form of Satanism. So they put this crown, this Keter, at the top of that, okay? So let me show you this next one here. So I was looking into these cards, right? And let me just read you this first. So the Keter says the Torah crown, or Keter, is placed on top of a Torah scroll and surrounds both of the wooden scroll handles or staves above the Torah cover or mantle. The crown, or Keter, is a common symbol. It signifies royalty and the importance of the Torah in Jewish life and culture. It also refers to the idea of God's sovereignty or status as ruler of the world in the Jewish faith. So, you know, in that engravement, they said, you know, they give glory to Hashem, but it's like they pass the glory to T-Rex. Because they say, give thanks to Hashem, for he is good, for his kindness endures forever, presented to you. Now you're God. We're going to give you the crown of God. Basically, you're giving him God's crown. So it's a crown that went on top of the Word of God, that was the crown representing God's power, and now you're giving that authority over to this gentleman, so to speak, right? So, so that's kind of intriguing. And so it says it's a status. You have the status when you have this crown. You have the status as ruler of the world, right? That's what gives him the power. So as much as Chucky has a lot going for him in terms of that Jewish connection and the oil that they got from Israel and so on and so forth for his coronation, you can't deny the fact that this guy has been given the actual Torah crown, the crown that crowns the Word of God, that represents God as the ruler of the world. And so when you look at this picture of him on here, basically waiting to get his crown, so he's in the investiture stage because the orb is in the right hand instead of the left. So he's kind of waiting for his crown. But now, as of July 10th, he was given his crown. He now has the crown to go with this ensemble here. So that's kind of intriguing, don't you think? And the fact that that crown represents him as ruler of the world. So what does that mean? Is he just one of the rulers of the world? Will he be one of the rulers of the world? Now, here's the next card. This is also touching Mr. T-Rex's card. Now, this is the world, So he rules the world, and he's touching that card. So just to show you that again here, see how he touches the world? He touches the tower, and he touches the magician. So magician could be a Musk connection. It could be like we talked about, different things with the headsets and stuff, but we'll talk about that more in a second, the tower and the world. So here in the world, we see these three. Did I go too far? Oh no, I've gone too far. Okay, yeah. So we see the pyramid there, right? And we see the two temples that have the triangle or pyramid on the top of them. We also see kind of connections, the round connections, almost like domes, almost like firmament on top of them. Now, remember we talked in the last video about the missing capstone from the pyramid. So that could be the stone right there. Kind of interesting thought. But the first thing I thought of course, when I saw those three is right here. Here's another triangle of three, another pyramid. And notably, on this particular one to the right, where the pyramid was, we see a bunch of triangles and pyramids. Specifically, there's a skylight that's a pyramid on top of that building. So is this a direct reference to the one world religion that we're talking about here? Makes sense. Ties directly into it there. So and is he and Mr. T going to be somehow involved with that? Then we go over here. And this was interesting because I was actually looking up the cards, the world, and I was looking up these cards and so forth, and it actually connected it to the Kabbalah. So I was already kind of making that connection there, with the Keter and the Kabbalah and so forth, and the Tree of Life. And then this article made the same connection, so I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. So here they're talking about the world, and here's this tree with the Keter at the top of the Tree of Life. And again, I don't know too much about the Tree of Life, so I'd love to get more of your thoughts and input on that. But this next picture I thought was kind of interesting. Here's another one with the Tree of Life. So you see crown at the top in the middle. Then you got wisdom, intelligence, and so on and so forth, and kingdom at the bottom there. But this particular image was interesting. Very free to the May, to the sun, to the ik. And let's look at this a little bit closer. So you see there's a triangle on top of, or a pyramid, you could say. They're everywhere here. There's pyramids all over the place. Can you find all the pyramids? But if you see them at the top of the column and at the bottom of the column, you see these, notably these pyramids. One's inverted and one's the other way around. You also see it in the middle of the painting. Then you see what looks like Jewish stars across the top. Now this is what you see in any free to the May, to the San, to the Ik, to the Lodge. If you were to go there, you would see this. They've got the firmament above with the sun and the moon below and so forth. Very interesting. So these are the two columns that they talk about in that cult as well. And I think it says it back in this article here. It's talking about the two columns of, what are the names again? The two columns of Boaz and Jachin, and you got the representing the moon, mother, and son, father, and so forth. But what I thought was interesting was the use of the triangles here, and I meant to bring this up in the last video, but I just didn't get a chance. But when you put these triangles, these are the same triangles or pyramids that were used during the second WAR to identify everybody. So this is kind of a first mark of the beast sort of effort. Maybe not first ever. I'm sure there've been times throughout history where, people have been marked, but this was a modern one back in the 30s and 40s, right? But they used these triangles or these pyramids overlapping on each other. And of course, when you overlap two pyramids, one inverted, you get the Jewish star. Now today they celebrate the Jewish star, but really that was a mark that they were given. It was a negative thing that they turned into a positive, but is that just how it's being marketed to them so that they can still be marked with the same mark? Is that just sort of a ploy to keep them marked? But there's a book kind of on the subject, but their use of these triangles, is like another form of branding of people. So thought that was kind of interesting, the connections there, and we see it later in the stars card also. Here's the next card. Now something interesting about all these cards is it has kind of a fluid motion for the ground, almost like shifting sands, things changing, a lot of change happening. And, Jesus talked about whoever hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice like a foolish man who built his house on sand. A lot of times you look at the scriptures, like Jesus was thinking, he was incorporating everything, and he had the big picture. He was like standing back from the whole world and seeing everything that was going to go down. And that's what you see now. The world is just shifting sands. Then you get this one, which is interesting because the sun changes from yellow to red here. So, it was yellow in the world. Where's the world one? I think it's back here somewhere, like right here. You see how it's yellow? The sun is yellow there, and then it goes red. And what's happening with the sun now? I went out today and I looked at the sun because I'd seen some videos talking about two suns. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go take a look at this. And of course, you never should look at the sun, right? And it's so hot right now, it's ridiculous. It was 105 today. I think a car was heated up to, but the AC was struggling. But I quickly looked at it and then just started blinking. And if you blink really fast, you can see an imprint of it on your eye lens. What do we call this again? What do we call our eye lens? I'm forgetting the names. My eye. What is it? What do you call this thing that covers our eyes? Eyelashes? No, not eyelashes, but the eye. I don't know. I'm forgetting now. But anyway, you know what I'm talking about. But I would just kind of wink really quickly, and I could see an imprint of what I looked at, and I saw two circles. Now you can say, well, you're just seeing things. Well, maybe. But I saw one major one. It seemed like it was kind of dripping and like a line going through. And then to the upper right, I saw a smaller one. And because you can't really see if you look directly at it, it's so bright that if they're so close together, you're not going to see any distinction. So you really kind of have to take a picture and do like a filter and, try to see something. But I just thought it was interesting and just sharing it with you. I'm not saying go blind yourself, but you might want to try it if you look quickly and then look away and just blink fast. See if you see what you see. I'd be interested to hear what you see. But anyway, if you want to, don't blame me later if you go blind. Okay, at your own risk, of course. But then in the upper left, you got the locust from Revelation there, which is kind of interesting. Of course, the rider on the white horse or the pale horse, or this would be, I don't know. This would be like, this is death. Death is on like I thought he was on a black, is death on a black horse? You got the pale horse, the red horse, the white horse, and then is it a black horse? Anyway, but interesting, it looks kind of white, so that's kind of interesting too. Masquerading as death, perhaps. But anyway, so you've got the obviously the cloud of mushroom there, but you also have the crops dying out, so pointing to the famine and so forth. So that's kind of interesting. And let's see. Says okay, so in terms of the magician, okay. In 2 Thessalonians, it says, the coming of the lost one will be in accordance with how Satan works. He will use all sorts of displays of power through signs and wonders that serve the lie, and all the ways that wickedness deceives those who are perishing. They perish because they refuse to love the truth and so be saved. For this reason, God sends them a powerful delusion so that they will believe the lie. So, and so will be condemned who have not believed the truth but have delighted in weakness. So it's all about lies and delusion and using, signs and wonders. Right. So does this have to do with technology? Does this have to do with like the weather, things that are going on in the weather today, like are signs and wonders, but they're really lies. Maybe they're not really, God's not really doing that, but it's happening through other means. For example, they're changing what the weather is doing. Perhaps that's really what's happening here. So this is one of the cards he's connected to as well. Like I said, it could be the brain of the chips. It could be, it could be the fake alien invasion, for example. That could be a sign and wonder that is a lie and a delusion. So there's lots of things that they're deluding us with. Of course, the fake bug going around that everybody's taking a poison to fight against is another lie and delusion. So there's a lot of those. So kind of interesting to think about there. And then this card, the Wheel of Fortune, where they're going around in a circle. Now, it seems to represent Germany, Russia, and France, and it looks like Merkel there on the right-hand side, but the United States also has red, white, and blue. So is this maybe Hitler to the E? And, that looks a lot like Mr. B on the bottom there, more so than Mr. Putin. So is it saying, hey, we're done with them. We've gotten what we needed out of them. We used them, and we're moving on to the next bunch, which just seems what they're doing now. So something to consider there. And here's the current person who's in. She's also blonde-haired there in Germany, so it could be referencing her, just throwing that in there, although it looks a lot more like Myrrh to the coal. And then this is the final card, which is the star card. It has 10 dots, just kind of like the first card had the 10 kingdoms. This has 10 little small stars. Does this relate to Satan bringing a third of the stars down out of heaven? Satan falling like lightning. You got him in the middle. Someone also mentioned it looks kind of like the Virgin Mary there, that shooting star in the middle. And then it has a lot of people's pictures. Is this pictures of children who have been taken? Does this relate to rapture? Does it relate to those, something like the Sound of Freedom, for example, where children are being taken away? Are these actual kids, that have been, something's happened to them? Are these fallen angels? I'm not sure, but something to consider there as well. And just some closing thoughts on Mr. T, okay? Okay, so it says on the possibility, the connections with him to possible Antichrist, okay? Not saying he is, just we got to look at what's in our face. So Revelation 13 says, and he was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and he was given authority to continue for 42 months. So we know that he's known for speaking great things and boastful things, and you can argue even blasphemies. So something to consider. Revelation, that's also Revelation 13:5. And then Daniel also talks about that. It says, so we talking about the boastfulness, but then it also says in Daniel 11, it says, instead of them, he will honor a god of fortresses. Now, again, he wanted to put up the wall, right? So he's honoring a god of fortresses. He's about building walls, building containers, building, things to protect. It says, a god unknown to his ancestors, he will honor with gold and silver, with precious stones and costly gifts. Well, if there's anything we know about Mr. T, he definitely loves his gold. I don't think I've ever seen a guy have more gold surrounding him than this guy, and costly things, costly gifts. So that's something to consider. He definitely is gaudy in that respect, with all his goldiness. He's Mr. Goldilocks. So is that something? There's a connection there. Fortresses and gold. Even likes golden toilets. That's how gold this guy is. So fulfills that scripture pretty well, actually. And they famously gave him that. He asked for a Van Gogh, and they gave him a gold toilet instead. So, and I'm sure he probably loved it. So I don't know. I didn't follow up in the story, but I wouldn't doubt it. So also, one last thought here on Mr. T before we wrap this up. And Daniel 8 says, I was considering suddenly a male goat came from the west across the surface of the whole earth without touching the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. Okay, well, this was just kind of a funny one, but I thought goat from the west, right? Goat from the west. Now, it does talk about Greece, but Greece could also just be referring to Western civilization in general, because it's from the west across the whole surface of the earth. So not just from Greece, right, but the whole surface of the earth. Well, there's this guy. There's a goat. Now, think about a goat. He's very stubborn. He's very bullheaded. You know, he plows through and sort of bombastic. I mean, that describes Mr. T pretty well. And look at those blonde locks on his hair, on his head there. Kind of fits the goat scenario when you think about it. Like, wow, people are always talking about his hair. I'm like, wow, you know, there might be something to this. I mean, wow. Are they related? I don't know. Something to think about. Wait, I think I found evidence. There it is. It's proven. Well, guys, I appreciate you hanging out with me today. I hope you found this thought-provoking, enlightening, maybe, something to consider. Like I say, I'm always open to what's actually going on, so I want to turn over every stone, every card in the deck, every crown. We have to look at this and figure it out. Guys, thanks so much for hanging out with me tonight. Thank you, too, for your prayers for me and my family and your support. You can do that through the links in the description. I thank you so much to help this ministry continue. And if you could hit that like button and that subscribe button, that notification bell, and share these videos with everybody you know. I want to give some shout-outs to those in the fellowship. It's good to see you. Good to see you guys in the chat. Thanks, Michelle and Jeannie, for moderating. Visionary Vet and Vicky, Fresh Mint, Ryan, whoever I see most recently in the chat, I'm just giving you shout-outs there. So, and you can join me in the after video chat. Jerry, good to see you. Saw you jump in there. And Makayo Ministries, be sure to subscribe there as well. If you just like straight up Bible study, we do that too. And also at Makayo Music as well. If you want to hear me sing for you, you can go check that out. And then over in the after video chat, I'll be there now. So if you can go to the first link in the description of this video. Let me see if it is the first link in the description of this video. Where it says, oh no, actually, not the watchful video, but the next one. It says connect with me. Go to that link or the one right next to it if the first one doesn't work. And I will be there in the after video chat. If you just want to chat about these ideas that I share with you tonight, if you think it's crazy, you're nuts, how could you ever say such a thing, Mikhail? Or if you thought of some new things, I always love to hear everybody's thoughts. In fact, I get most inspired by other people's thoughts and input, so I would love to hear your thoughts as well. But guys, the time is near one way or the other, whether it's Mr. T or Chucky or somebody we haven't even seen or met yet. Somebody else is on the scene, you know. Someone's going to come out of the abyss and surprise us all. The time's now to repent and turn to God so that your sins can be wiped out, and the times of refreshing may come from the Lord, and that he may send the Christ, because that's what we're waiting for. We're waiting for the Christ who's been appointed for you. So don't you want him to come? Don't you want to go to that land? Don't you want to go to that land? Don't you want to go to that land where I'm bound? Yeah, you want to go, don't you? So now's the time, guys. Turn to God. If you need help with that, come on over. I'm happy to help you and get your life right with the Lord, because you don't want to be left behind, left back with the goats with the funny hair, or the funny Chuckies in the world. You don't want to be left behind with these folks, man. This is not where you want to hang out. You want to be hanging out in heaven. So I hope that you will get right with God today, and feel free to reach out to me if you want to learn more about how to do that. You can go find it at Macau Ministries. I talk a lot about salvation over there and what must I do to be saved. So we'd love to share that more with you guys. I'm wishing you all the best and all the blessed, and